1969, along with the Kray twins and other members of their firm, I was sentenced to life imprisonment for my part in a brutal gangland murder. The judge recommended I serve a minimum of 15 years. As I look back on all the wasted years of my life, the violence, the anger, the greed, the dishonesty, I got very, very depressed and even thought of ending it all. Then alone, in the darkness of my living hell, I had an experience that would completely change the course of my life. Came in, the Beatles came in, and it was free blood, and it was a pretty good time everywhere, you know. It was there for the taking. It was like the old Wild West. Going to a club, everybody knew you, suited and booted. In them days, it was three-piece suits. You know, it was quite a time to be Jack the Lad. I was just a predator like a lot of other people, really. I mean, I started off burglary, then from burglary to waist snatches, from waist snatches to safe blowing. So, I mean, I just went up and up and up, really. Some protection money, blue film distributors and pornographic bookshops and stuff like that. Anywhere I could get a shilling.
The environment we lived in the East End, I mean, it was very hard. And Chrissy started, you know, mixed with the other boys and started getting involved in thieving. Where he finished up doing the ball store. He went into remand homes. He went into prison. He was a very, very hard man. I mean, this thing, you know what I mean, that can't be said. I mean, because it's going a little bit over the top. But Chrissy has hurt quite a few people in his time.
That was a violent age, the 60s, you know. It was the person who could move quickest, hit hardest, and be prepared to, like, use a knife or a gun. There were people taken away and severely beaten up. There were people cut up, coshed, and everything. Ammonia sprayed in their face, you know. I mean, it's pretty tough old time. And you had to be prepared to use them kind of tools if you was in that game. You know, there was no nice guys.
Well, the Chris that I knew, like, you know, in the back end of the 60s, was a person that didn't see any danger, didn't basically give a shit. There's no other way to put it, like, for a man, for a lethal person to have around you, a very worrying person to have around you, because if you was in the company of Chris in his younger days, you'd never know what would happen. You could be sitting there having a meal, you could be sitting there having a drink, and next minute, bump, the lot would go up. And he'd just be, as I say, a raving out-and-out bloody lunatic.
My relationship to the Krays was one that I knew them tentatively. I mean, I never really got that involved. I was more interested in the North and the Midlands. I mean, that to me was far more lucrative territory. I knew them to say hello to and to socialise with, but actually being part of their firm was never anything I ever, you know, aspired to or wanted to be part of. In May 1968, out of the blue, the police arrested the twins. It was the beginning of the end, and a couple of months later they came for me. I was charged with the murder of Jack McVitie, but unlike some of their firm, I refused to grasp, even though I knew perfectly well what actually happened. On the night in question, I'd been out with my brother Tony and a couple of friends. We had a few drinks and ended up at the Regency Club in Stoke Newington, where we bumped into Jack the Hat and were invited to a party in Ebbing Road. But as soon as we walked in, I realised there was no party. We'd walked into a trap. I see Reggie Kray jump up and put a gun to Jack the Hat's head. It didn't work. I didn't know whether he was trying to frighten him. I couldn't believe this because I'd seen them the previous week being quite pally. So I couldn't believe quite what I'm seeing, and it made me quite upset. And a friend of mine, Connie White, said, "What's the matter, Chris?" I said, "Well, I didn't come down here for this, Connie." And with that, Kray came out and said, "What's the problem? What's the matter with him?" And Connie explained what I told him, and Ronnie said, "Take him home." I went home, but unfortunately I didn't stay there. I was worried about Tony, my brother, so I got a gun and went back to the flat in Evering Road. When I arrived, Jack was already dead, and in the moment of madness that I'd lived to regret, I got myself involved in removing the body. I was committed, along with a number of other men, 10 in all, to the Old Bailey, number 1 court. There were 6 of us charged with murder. There was a plea that I hadn't taken any physical part in any murder. There was no evidence to prove I had any knowledge of what was happening, but nevertheless, after all the arguments and everything else, I was sentenced to life with a recommendation that I serve 15 years. I could have justified 10 years because I was guilty as hell of accessory after the fact, but I certainly hadn't murdered anybody.
Well, the first contact I had with Chris was when I saw a Category A van turning up at the prison, flanked by armed police cars, and I was informed that we were getting another one of the so-called Kray gang, and this one was Chris Lambrianou. He arrived and he was one of the big names, and he had respect, and he also had influence in the prison with people, and we knew that he would come and he would live up to that, and he was a man who we had to watch extremely carefully. As a person who was extremely dangerous, who had a great deal of influence and a great deal of ability with regards to potential escape. So he would certainly be in the top 10 or 15 men in the whole of the system.
A man once said to me, "Chris, they've done a survey that after 7 years, anybody in a long-term prison must be crazy." And I guess all that came in my way. I mean, I at times was just out of my head, you understand, with madness. I was in my cell this day, and I wasn't thinking about anything in particular. I wasn't in a depressive frame of mind, but somebody started to play this record down below me, and whoever it was kept on playing it over and over again, and I felt this cloud, like it weren't depression, it was something more than that. It was almost intensely evil. I mean, I was just pacing up and down. I guess I was very, very angry, and it was all really hitting me quite profoundly. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and what I saw was the devil of my own making. I had been the evil thing in my life, and I guess I was really confronted with the actual fact of actually growing up, really taking responsibility for the things I'd done. So by now it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, the blood is running, raging hot in my veins one minute, then as cold as ice the next. I mean, I feel like I'm ready to, like a bomb ready to explode. If anybody had walked through that door, I certainly would have killed them. I'm in a real battle here. I'm in a real battle with evil. And there's a voice inside my head saying, "Kill yourself. You're never going to get out. What have you got in front of you? Nothing. What's behind you? It's all so far away. Look around you. There's nothing. You're on your own. You're dying. You're going to die here. Get it over with." And I thought, I can't think like this. This is madness. And I just dropped to my knees, and there was a box of books. And I started to get these books and chuck them out, look at one and see if I could find anything. There was philosophy, there was something else, there was thrillers. And then I came across the Bible, and I got that and I chucked it away. Started to go through the books, and I went back over the other books, and finally I picked the Bible up. I'd never had one in my life before. The only time I'd ever had a Bible was when I was in the chokey cell, which is punishment, ripping the pages out to roll the fag up with. But I knew there was something about it. Men of real character and strength. You know, they've died for it. It's had such an important impact on these people. So I thought, well, if I put it under my pillow, it's now about 4:30, maybe I'll be able to get some sleep. And it wasn't doing anything. I was getting absolutely no peace at all. And I just got the Bible and put it by my arm. And I rocked myself like a little baby. And I must have fallen asleep. And if what I had experienced was a breakdown, then I don't see it like that. It wasn't a breakdown for me, it was a breakthrough. You know, I'd found something that gave me, that I found something so powerful that I could hang on to. It was, you know, I'd found a foothold into another way. I didn't know where it was taking me. I didn't know where I was going to go with it. But it was all I had. I had nothing else. It changed my life in prison because it gave me another perception. It gave me a doorway into another world which was more understanding, more compassionate. I mean, I won't say I was totally at peace. I mean, I then had a long walk with it. Do you understand? But I found that I wasn't alone in that walk.
It just doesn't happen to the Chris Lambrianou of this world. Because don't forget, if a person gives up the previous life that Chris had, he's got to start a new life, because his whole life is concerned with crime, with criminals. He has to have a new set of friends. He has to have new experiences. He has to develop new attitudes, or else the new attitudes come from his conversion. Now, I've met many people who've got God in prison, and quite frankly, usually God lasts as long as the sentence.
I was quite fearful about actually coming out into the world after being in prison for some 15 years. I mean, come on, I mean, I'd almost been like a monk. Where did I fit in at my age, you know? Would I find a church? And that was very important, to find a natural home that would actually accept me, you understand? Initially, I came out and I did any job that was available, that was legal. I mean, even while unemployed, I'd go around and cut a good friend called Father Chris for. And he would have me doing all these old age pensioners' gardens and building walkways and all sorts, you know. But, you know, really, my heart was into actually finding a job. I met my wife Caroline, and I think she began to show me areas of my life that I'd never only dreamt of while in prison, through country life and things like that. Places like Waddesdon and Blenheim. And so we got very close. Then we got married, and then we had the twins. We lived in a village at the time, and to walk through that village on a Sunday morning, just me and them two little babies, and I used to sing to them as I went along in a double pushchair. I mean, I knew what the love of Christ was, but to balance that out, you need to be receiving and giving human love. And I mean, in the twins and Caroline, I found all them things. That's all I lived for, really, just to live to be with them. I lived for my family. I hadn't been much of a family man previously, you know, before I went into prison, but they were my life, really, you know, and they still are. I mean, they're my best friends. Sadly, my marriage to Caroline wasn't to last. We had 5 children in quick succession, and at times it was extremely hard. A life of crime and 15 years in prison didn't really prepare me for being a sensitive husband. In the end, the financial and emotional pressures were just too much for us. What had become a volatile marriage ended sadly in divorce. Nowadays I live alone, not far from Oxford, and see my children every other weekend and school holidays. They're still the most important people in my life. They're all I live for.
My next contact with them was when I was asked to give a talk, actually in Worcester Cathedral during Prisoners' Week, and obviously I said yes, I'd be delighted to. And the organiser said, well, you'll be sharing the platform with the next con. And I said, oh, which one? And they said, Chris Lambrianou. And my immediate reaction, quite honestly, was, I'm not sharing no platform with that bastard, you know. And they assured me that, oh, well, no, there'd been a great change, that he got religion. And I said, yeah, well, I know a lot of them have got bloody God, and that usually lasts as long as what the sentence does, and I've yet to be convinced. But as it was, I went along, and we had lunch together. And right from the off, you know, this wasn't the Chris Lambrianou that I knew.
7 years after my release, I became unemployed. My parole officer suggested voluntary work and brought me to the lay community, a drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre. Like me, many of the people here have a checkered past.
The only happiness I ever got out there was when I scored that bit of brown powder. And that's the only time I ever smiled. My kids used to say to me, Dad, you never smile, you're always miserable. No, and basically I was just living in misery, so I had nothing to feel good about.
I've been in care, out of care, in prison, out of prison. I met up with drugs while I was in prison, and then it just like continued from there and got worse. I ended up supplying 2 undercover policemen with crack.
You shouldn't be watching these beefs, Derek. When I first came here, I thought, what do I want with a bunch of junkies? I'd only ever done manual jobs and couldn't really see how I'd fit in. But at the lay, I finally found somewhere that all my experience of crime, prison, drugs and loneliness could be put to good use. I've been here 6 years now, and to this day, I still can't believe they took a chance on an ex-gangster and convicted murderer.
I don't think Chris was any bigger a risk than some of the people that we already work with, or some of the people that have actually moved on to working in this field. We strive to give people opportunities, and I think that Chris has come along and he's slotted into this job quite well. His heart's in the right place, and I think that it has worked out beneficial to both parties, really.
He was out 3 weeks now. How many burglaries?
What, in total?
Yeah.
65.
65. And all to feed a crack habit.
Crack and smack habit, yeah.
I mean, that's a one-man crime wave, isn't it?
Well, when I went in jail, the burglaries dropped by 19% in Derby. Well, you was there when the policeman was there.
The police actually said that. So once again...
Chris's job is a very important job. It's to take people to court, to maybe speak up for them in the dock.
But I mean, that's your prerogative. Nobody keeps you at the lead but you understand what I'm saying?
It was kind of natural for him, you know, to give people that bit of reassurance that they wasn't going somewhere where the regime was going to be too hostile to start with, and who better a person to portray that picture, really.
This is the last stop hotel, you know, between here and hell. You know, you see these people that come in the door, some of them quite ill, in fact intensely ill, and then you see them grow bit by bit in stature. It's almost like the change is absolutely marvellous, because it's almost like putting a seed in the ground and it's next to nothing. I mean, it's almost dead, and then to see that burst forth into life, it's very, very, it's amazing. You know, never fails to take my breath away.
Half the staff that have been here, like yourself, have been through, been prison, have done drugs, have been through their own past experiences, and that helps, I think, when you work in a place like this also, to help to get to know people and help them.
So
more,
they see through you to see your need, and then direct it.
I have got a really good relationship with my family now. They have put a lot back into me.
But you've had to build that up.
I have had to build it up, and even so now, the trust, it will take a long time to actually get all that back, but it's a start. I've made a start with my family, which I wouldn't have been able to do.
I feel that I find real friends, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I know people, and I know what their qualities are, they know what my qualities are. Do you know what I mean? I feel I find a friendship, what is a friendship?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not just like, yeah, you're alright, mate, do you know what I mean? Should we go out thieving or whatever? It's a real friendship.
Prison is nothing more than a building. I mean, the lay community is nothing more than a building, but it's the people that are actually in that building or in prison that really is we build our relationships with.
There was like little rooms, people talking about this gangster that was in the community, and like, I was just interested to meet him, and I thought, oh yeah, I bet he's up to something, you know what I mean? And seeing him being so like caring, I thought, no, this can't be real. I know he does do his bit for churches. He's encouraged us to go carol singing with him, but it's never been like anytime you see Chris, oh gosh, here comes that Bible basher or something like that. It's never been like that. So I get on well with him, and I think most people get on well with him, and they don't feel like they're having any like religion stuff down their throat.
You know what I mean? I've only been there for 3 months, and this place is doing me the world of good already.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to rebuild all my relationships.
And even physically, you can see the change.
Oh yeah, like, you know, since I've come up, I'm stoning off on in weight.
Yeah.
I'm more aware, you know what I mean? I'm drug free.
Yeah.
Being off drugs, this is like the first time in 7 years, and it brings out all these feelings.
It wasn't forced with Chris. You could see the guy really cared, and that's what struck me about him straight away. You know, the fact that he did care, and there was someone there who was willing to look after me, basically.
It made me understand a bit more about myself.
I've never spoke to Chris about his past, you know. I respect him for what he is now, not for what he was. But it does make it a little bit easier to talk to someone you know has come from that.
Why'd we come here? We came here to free ourselves from our past and to change the way we feel, think, or drink. To achieve our homes, we must see ourselves as others see us. It is easier to change ourselves than it is to change the world.
The next time I saw Chris, he was working in a drug rehabilitation unit in Oxford, and he certainly didn't have to be working with people who really, during his imprisonment, he would have seen as the dross of the prison world. I mean, one thing it does for me, of course, is it holds out the hope that even people like Chris Lambrianou can change and can make it. Because to see him working in the way that he does, in group situations and with individual men, and speaking on their behalf in court, you know, I really came away with and sort of thinking, well, whatever God is and wherever God is, then by God, he was around and picked up Chris Lambrianou.
What do you see here? What do you hear here? What do you hear here? Take it with you!
The man that I met, he's a very, very big man, and he's a bigger man than ever he was when he was a gangster, and indeed he's a bigger man than any of the gangsters that I've ever known.
Help each other to help ourselves!
A way of trust, a way back into the heart of God, you understand, where we belong. I was such a small, mean creature, but inside of me was a giant. You know, the Holy Spirit was a giant. The Spirit of Christ was a giant. I keep on suppressing it, thinking, no, come on, you know, this world doesn't, of course this world doesn't understand it. You don't find him until you're on your knees. If what I believe is a con, what a wonderful con. It's got me through my life. It's marvellous. You can keep on conning me. We're all playing truant, but some of us have gone back and we've said sorry. Doesn't make us perfect. We still make mistakes. We mess up, but we know he's there. Well, I want to tell my children I'm a wonderful criminal, I'm successful, go forth and do the same. No, that's not what I want for my kids. I'm sorry, I don't want the disappointment. I don't want the heartache, and I don't want the pain. And I don't want the deceptions, and I don't want the misery. I want them to know what love is. I want them to know what my dad wanted for me. I want them to be decent citizens. That's what I want. And I may not be around to see it, But in my heart, that's the right way.
If you'd like to submit an idea to the Community Programmes Unit, write to PO Box 5045, London W3 6WY.
But I wasn't made for prison, and neither were you guys. You understand? You were made for so much better. You know, don't give up on yourself. You can make it, but you've got to believe you can.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly, moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you